Good evening and welcome to Fridays Live with me, Raj Nayak. This evening, I have with me a journalist who has actually practiced journalism of courage. Known for her investigative journalism, she is someone who has dared to go where angels fear to tread. Recipient of many prestigious international and Indian awards for political journalism, a woman who is a crusader for justice, social equity, and human rights. My guest this evening is my dear friend, Shoma Chaudhury. Shoma, welcome to Fridays Live.
Thank you very much, Raj. And thank you for that generous introduction.
Yeah, I was, normally when I go in, I do a single frame, and that's why I got a little disoriented. And then I said, let me go with as it is. So, Shoma, thank you so much for being here. This show is all about bringing people from different walks of life and understanding their journey. And you had a very illustrious journey in your life, very colorful one, I would say. And you've seen the peak, you've seen you've seen the peak and the bottoms. You've done both. And so let me ask you. I mean, since you've seen journalism from such close quarters, right? And now you have your own YouTube channel, Inquiry with Shoma Chaudhury. What's the changes that you've seen in journalism over the last few years?
God, that's a big question, Raj. I definitely think that journalism in India is going through a very, very difficult time. And that's not because there aren't good people in the system, but I think structurally, all of Indian media is going through a very difficult time. And it's part of the global sort of move, but definitely in India, there's a greater sense of strain. And if you speak to people, it's not just as an observer or consumer of news, but those who are within the profession, will share that great sense of disquiet, largely because I think people are not able to do the kind of work that we all came into journalism to do, which is really honest, objective, evidence-based, keeping, holding truth, power to truth, asking questions. And you, of course, you're meant to play both roles, which is you endorse things that are good for the public good, but you're also meant to be a watchdog on power. And I think today it's become almost close to impossible to be a watchdog on power, because structurally also it's so problematic. There is the dominance politically, but also because most of media does not pay for itself, it's sponsor driven. So the whole business model is so difficult. And then, of course, now it's got polarized with social media. There's a great pressure to constantly escalate the pitch at which people speak, the whole TRP thing. So particularly in television journalism, I think there's I don't think we're living out the core tenets of what journalism should be.
As a journalist, what do you feel about it? How do you feel about it?
I feel sad, Raj. I'll tell you, you asked like, what was it like 10 years back, or, when, say, I started out, or when, one had the privilege to be running as a managing editor, was running Tehelka, that there was, when young people asked you about journalism, with looking them in the eye, one could, say that this was a profession that's a calling, that you can really do good, you can impact society. There was a sense of space. Of course, structurally, there was all the same constraints, but I think it wasn't as complicated a time as it is now, because social media, in addition to everything else I mentioned, the financial structure and the political structure, social media has made it so difficult to really live by your own value system, So today, what I feel is I feel sad, because when young people ask me, should we join journalism? I'm almost scared to sell them the idea of idealism, because I know when they join organizations, very quickly to survive, they will have to set the idealism aside, And like I said, it's not because there aren't good people in the system, but I don't think the fraternity is now standing together as a solid, on principle, watching, like, we don't have each other's back. It's so polarized, it's so ugly, everyone's waiting to pull everyone else down. I think internally there's a lot of disillusion that the profession has to live with. I'll tell you, I spoke to some top notch, last year there was a lot of ugliness in the media, there were media wars that were happening. And I spoke to a lot of proprietors and anchors, really top notch guys. And many of them personally said they can't look themselves in the mirror, they are unhappy with what they're doing, but they don't want to vacate the space. And they have a sense that they're being pressured to do things, either because they need to earn a living or because they're external pressures. And so what I'm trying to say is that there is that sense of disquiet. I think time has come for the profession to really stand together for some principles, which I'm not sure we're doing. That's not to say pockets of good work aren't happening, Raj, but I'm not saying it's some blanket criticism, but I'm talking emotionally about how people are feeling about that profession.
Yeah, and no, what you say is so true. And there have been journalists who have vacated the space and tried to create their own niche in their own way, whether it is creating their own social media, YouTube channel like yours and things like that.
Yeah.
How difficult is it? I mean, now that you also have your own YouTube channel, how easy or difficult it is to chart your own independent journalism? I mean, to do it without having the infrastructure and the support of a large organization.
It's very difficult, Raj. I won't even call what I'm doing right now journalism in the traditional sense. I run this show called Inquiry with Shoma Chaudhury, which, I interview a range of people. I try to do it in depth. I try to do it with a certain integrity of purpose. But, it's not journalism in the sense where I can put feet on ground, where I can uncover anything, where I can really, as I said, hold power to truth, can't speak what one really wants to in terms of, it's not just about opinion making. If you have an opinion, it should be evidence backed. And to have evidence, you need to put reporters on ground. You need to operate in a zone where, social structures, whether it's legal, civil society, politically, that there are spaces in which to do that kind of work. Sponsors, advertisers, there's a society that's willing to receive evidence-based, sort of analysis of where society is at. So as someone who's been a journalist I would say in the past, I would say what I'm doing now is discourse creation, perspective creation. And I do that through very accomplished people. So I feel satisfied that I'm creating a space where people can speak truthfully. It's not polarized, it's not angry. So to that extent, I'm happy with what I'm doing. But it's not able to fill that role which journalism should fill in a society, which is really uncovering information, uncovering that which others want to hide. And I would reiterate that evidence-based perspective. Today, Raj, we're looking at such a crisis that people don't have presumed credibility for any channel or any paper. There's a sense that there's some game going on. Because it's so opinionated, it's just about opinion. It's not backed necessarily with hard facts. And again, I'll reiterate, there are places which are doing that. They're small pockets, but I know that all of them must be struggling very hard financially to make sense of, how to create financial sustainability to what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of YouTube channels that are there, and people are doing great work there. Not just interviewing people, but like you said, on the ground, on the field, reporting and things like that. But when you were a founder of Tehelka, and you are one of the founders of Tehelka. Pardon? Yeah, one of the founders of Tehelka.
Yeah.
Co-founder of Tehelka. And when you founded Tehelka, I remember those days, where you had set it with a certain objective in mind, and you had done a lot of crowdfunding in the initial stages, where you had people as founder subscribers or founder patrons and things like that. I was one of the
Right.
people who contributed those days. I remember.
Thank you. Yes, I
So
remember that.
yeah, yeah. So I just want to know, why is it not? Can that not be replicated today, or it's that
Actually,
much
it's
more
an ideal,
difficult?
today. I think it's more difficult because the rules have become more difficult, Raj. But actually, it's an ideal time to crowdfund public interest journalism. And again, there are digital mediums who are trying to do that. I think Wire and several others. I see requests out there. I think they do have a lot of public subscription backed models. But like I said, and people are doing good work. But do we have the scale? Do they have the scale to really do the amount of work they would want to do? I'm not sure, and I think it is financially difficult to sustain that. But today, the reason why the media is also becoming difficult for people to fund is because the rules are becoming harder and harder. The space is narrower. In recent months, the government has passed quite a few rules, which cuts FCRA, so that cuts off foreign funding to a large extent. They've changed the OCI rules, so people of Indian origin outside also can't really directly, invest in media. Then many platforms, grants, they're just a lot of sort of financial taps are being tightened, and I think there needs to be a lot of discussion about this, that what are the concerns which are making governments turn off the taps, and this government is actually following on the footsteps of the previous government when FCRA rules became so strict. So there is a sense that money is now only available to those who are aligned with establishment. And that is a difficult proposition for any democracy. You need free media to, I always think, I've always said this to corporates as well, and I say to whatever political years that one can speak to, that it may be uncomfortable in the short term, but ultimately for good leadership, you need good data points, And if you don't allow journalists to get you news from the ground, to really understand what's going on and give you good data points, you get locked into an echo chamber of people with vested interests, who will keep reassuring you that something is fine, or, there's only that much of management that one will do before society expresses itself in different ways, So I think right now, in many ways, both corporates and political power are cutting off data points for themselves by not allowing journalism to really flourish the way it should. And I think us also need to do a lot of introspection. There is so much of polarization and playing to TRPs, and just it's so emotional, Raj. There's just like journalism has become about emotion and screaming rather than just evidence-based perspective.
People often use this argument that it's TRPs, and things like that. But if you actually look at the overall audience size of, say, English news channels, it's less than 1%, 0.1%.
Yeah.
So with such a small audience, TRPs really don't really matter, But it's a great excuse for people to say that it's TRPs and things like that. Of course, TRPs do play a certain role, but beyond that, I think if you have good journalism, people will pay for quality.
Yeah. I think, across the world now, there is some sense that, many of the legacy newspapers are closing their digital, doors unless you pay. And I pay for a lot of news that I consume, and I'm sure a lot of people will be doing that. But in India, everything is a double-edged sword, Raj, because there also is large constituencies of people who are not able to pay very much. But I think even if we started micropayment, somewhere the structure of news has to change. If we are only, I used to always say this, that we are willing to pay 300, 400 rupees for a cup of coffee, but you're not willing to pay that for intellectual content. And then naturally, very, very good professionals in the system are not able to do what they would do if they were freed up to do it, I would still say Indian journalism has some of the most amazing professionals, people with real knowledge on ground, they have experience, they have a desire, they have idealism. But is there the structure for them to operate? Not in the mainstream, Yes, maybe in pockets people are trying to do good work, but then how large is your voice? Are you impacting, the sources of power? You're not. So yes, you're keeping your integrity alive, but are you being able to shape discourse the way you could if large structures can also function in a very professional way? I mean, this last year we've had so many examples, Raj, like just so many of really bad faith behavior on the part of the media. I mean, the Sushant Singh Rajput episode stands out very starkly, but it's a symptom of the way media conducts itself nowadays very often.
So where is the accountability? I mean, there's no accountability. Is it people can just come, do something, scream, shout, make sure that people's lives are destroyed, and then just get away with it?
Yeah.
Or is there a
Raj,
system that can hold people accountable?
Raj, I just noticed that my computer's on low charge. If you just give me a second, I'm going to...
Yeah, take your time. No problem. Absolutely no problem. This is a show which is live and real. So please go and get your card. So that was it. I mean, we'll wait. We are just waiting for Shoma to get back. And this is the nuances of technology. Something that I've learned over a period of time, that when you sit with your computer, make sure it's charged, make sure your phone is charged. So this is something I've learned the hard way. And great.
No, I'm so sorry. I just drove into Delhi, so I didn't realize that.
No problem. So my question to you was, again, coming back, is there some mechanism of accountability?
So I think you've asked a really important question, Raj, because I, for one, I'm not part of the mainstream media right now, but I would resist government control to the end of the last mile. I don't think media should ever be under government control or regulation. But I think there's a great, great need for the media itself to introspect and to definitely live, to create some very strong ground rules. I know we have the Press Council and you have the NBC and, all of that, but it's not strong enough, because I think what the media has the power to do is to really impact and destroy or make lives. And when you get it wrong, you put in a small corrigendum, people's lives are burnt by it, but you move on, and then we which, I mean, people have to have some recourse against the misuse of media as well. And if we don't want defamation suits and we don't want government control, there should be a mechanism that the media itself has created in good faith, which is that if you get a story wrong, you as the platform that got it wrong would carry that very, very prominently for a certain percentage of time, almost equal prominence to which you ran the story which destroyed others. You put out apologies. I think there should also be, because very often there's an echo effect that if you got a story wrong, other channels should also carry it for a while, that, such and such story was wrong. Because otherwise, there's just debris left behind by the media, And like I'm saying, this was just the most recent example of many ways in which media gets some very high-profile stories wrong, and there's no recourse. So one is that. The other, I would say, is the quality of news. I would love it if in today's world, where there's great pressure to put out news like so fast, before you've processed it, before you've cross-checked it, I think if I had the opportunity to run a platform right now, I would rate our own news, If there is a pressure to put it out before, then one should have a kind of grading system for the news that you're putting out, to say it's unverified, it's speculative, in the middle of an investigation, it's a police handout, it's a government handout. At least rate the quality of the information that you're putting out, so that people, I think long term, that'll generate so much goodwill, Raj. It'll generate so much goodwill for the media, because even those in power will take you seriously. Those who are watching and consuming and shaping their lives based on what you're putting out will take you seriously, because they'll know that, okay, there may be some pressures for you to put it out, but you're putting it out with a warning of what is the status of that news, not like gospel truth. So
No, but breaking news, I mean, it's become a joke now because, somebody having breakfast is also breaking news now.
yeah.
You know?
Now, again, I mean, television news gets the brickbats from everyone. I know I'm very critical of television news, but the medium is so difficult. I can understand the pressure, sort of fraternity is in. But there also, I would say that there's something that people need to think about. The problem with TV news, in my view, is that the whole point of journalism is you go, you look into something, you uncover, you speak to people, you process something, and then you put out something that you have processed and understood yourself. I think the structural problem with television news is that the process of discovery, the process of investigation of any story, regardless of whether it's a simple story or a deep one, your very process of moving from 0 to 100 as a journalist, your information gathering is itself a national spectacle, I mean, that is just so intrinsically harmful. You've just got, let's take a murder story, you've just got the first suspect by the police, and it's like breaking news. First suspect, you've not ascertained. The police may change its story, but you've already done it to people. The Arushi Talwar's parents come to mind. They were absolutely ruined by the media, Now, those are two lives which finally the legal system found that, there was no evidence. They had lost a daughter. But this whole frenzied process of bit by bit, the jigsaw, it's just put out there, no verification, not even, like I said, a rating of that news. You're doing it incessantly to people, and that's the problem. You start, you do an interview, you do a TV interview, and you ask people, did you do this? Did you do that? Have you done this? Have you done that? Before people can explain themselves, everything is, it's like I said, your process of discovery as a journalist is a national spectacle, I think that's
You
very,
spoke
very
about the Arushi murder. Yeah, you spoke about the Arushi murder case. And I remember that you were at the forefront of trying to put a counter narrative, and finally the family got some kind of justice.
yeah.
And you've done many other stories like this. I mean, you've been at the forefront of it. Like I said, you've been an investigative journalist and a crusader for justice and social equity. If you go back and look at all the major stories that you've been part of, which was your toughest one, or which one is something that you'll always cherish?
There's so many which other journalists in Tehelka did, Raj, even more than my own personal work. I think as the managing editor there, I was supremely proud of many of our journalists, who individually did fantastic work. I think Ashish Khaitan, I would name as like the top-rated investigative journalist in the country. He did some really, really difficult work in Gujarat, and that has stood the scrutiny of many courts. It stood the scrutiny of hostile courts, hostile governments, but his work has proved to be sterling. So that is one. I think another one where we had a lot of impact was, there were false encounters in Manipur, where every year there used to be thousands of encounter killings, hundreds of encounter killings, which ended up becoming thousands over many years. And it was a real issue there. And one time we got, by chance actually, a series of photographs of a particular false encounter, one in a lifetime kind of story. And surprisingly, many media houses turned that story down because others also got the photographs. But we did it, and we did the background work on it. And that triggered genuine systemic overhauling. A court was set up, a commission was set up. And that whole process of just random killings came down like almost by 95%, I would say. So that was great. I think apart from all the investigations, I did a story on Soni Sori, on Binayak Sen, several others. But I think overall, if I look back on the Tehelka legacy, was that we did stay very committed to public interest journalism. So we were doing stories on water and farmers and tribals at a time when it wasn't very, it wasn't the white hot focus of the rest of the country, but one was trying to cast light in areas where there wasn't so much journalistic focus.
Sorry,
Yeah.
slow connection. Internet. This is. Yeah, you were speaking about Binayak Sen. Yeah, you were telling me.
Yeah, I said that. Sorry, I was just putting it back. So I said that I did personally stories on Binayak Sen and Soni Sori and the Talwars and several others. But I was saying that overall, if I look at the Tehelka legacy, I think what I would be proud of as an editor is that we did a lot of public interest journalism at a time when there wasn't so much focus on issues of water, sustainability, environment, farmers, tribals, that's like a large percentage of India that lives in a kind of dark hole of our imagination. So I think we did a lot of work in those areas, and a lot of young journalists were doing that. So I'd be proud of that work.
Okay, I'm coming back to televisions because we spoke about journalists getting polarized. We spoke about the pressures on them from probably managements, and we blamed. What about the viewers? I mean, do you feel that somewhere the viewers also have to be blamed for just
They
taking
have to
anything that
be.
comes?
Yeah, I mean, I think you were asking me what I feel. I'm sorry if this sounds sort of, I don't know, like priggish, but I feel so sad when people critique what they're watching on TV, but they continue to watch it and say, "Maza hai," it's entertainment. And some of the most toxic sort of discourse on TV is getting popular because viewers watch it as a pastime, as a kind of gladiator sport. And of course, that's sad. But I wouldn't, so of course, as viewers, you have a responsibility for not popularizing something that's harmful. But ultimately, Raj, I think it's for us as practitioners, there are pressures. But like I was saying, somewhere some solidarity has to come together in the profession where if everyone comes together and says, there are certain things we will not do as viewers, I mean, like cinema. How has cinema changed? Because there was some cinema directors that had the courage to say we won't make the kind of, fairly like the 80s cinema, which had really gone over the rails, or 80s, 90s, there was a kind of really mindless, stupid Hindi cinema. There were young directors that broke away from that, and they've created a whole range of things that can be done now. So there also one could have said that, oh, there are financial pressures, the audience likes this. Today the audience will not take bullshit a lot of times, from Indian cinema, because they are responding to better fare. You have to put out better fare consistently and on scale for people to respond. It's the same people. I'll remind ourselves that when Arvind Kejriwal first came with some language of idealism into politics, look at the kind of upsurge of good faith and goodwill that there was
Groundswell.
for him. Yeah, there was so much of. So I keep feeling that there's real desire for idealism. Someone has to have the courage to provide it at population scale. I think that's a failure of leadership. You can't just blame the viewership.
And so one of the things you did mention about idealism and Arvind Kejriwal, do you think that this current pandemic at this moment, okay, suddenly, you know, the whole country is going through hell and people are feeling the pain, and people are obviously, if you go and just watch social media, and suddenly there is anger building up in people, you think somewhere media also has a responsibility of not having, over the last 1 year, projected what was really happening, or even now as we speak, not projecting the truth?
Uh, yeah, I mean, if we take the truth to be what people are, suffering, I don't have any sense today, Raj, if we go by media narratives, just instinctively knowing the way our society is structured, I would imagine there's a lot of pain on ground. because people have lost jobs. We saw the migrant exodus last year. Of course, there's been some amount of provision by the government and by many private, enterprises, individuals who have tried to mitigate pain. But, there are artisans, craftsmen, small businesses, workers, daily wage workers. Yes, maybe you're not starving because the government is providing, but what is your sense of self-respect, just the next level of human living, which is to be able to provide for a spectrum of things your family might need beyond the roti and the namak and the chawal and 1 kilo of dal. We have no sense of that. So sometimes I wonder, because as I said, I no longer have the privilege of being able to send reporters on the ground or go myself. That sitting in Delhi, very often I think, am I in a dreamscape? Am I trying to imagine pain where there's none? Because there isn't it's not like you're having hunger riots or something on the street, But is there not pain? I don't see it reflected in the media, but I would definitely imagine that there is a lot. Because even at our strata of life, it's difficult, and one is finding it tough to meet all one's needs, forget luxuries. I cannot begin to imagine the disenfranchisement that's happened on the ground, So yeah, I do think. I also think, Raj, it's very unpopular to say this, but I think somewhere, the focus on COVID has been to a level where one is not, I think even governments have found it very difficult to take considered decisions, because it's been so much of just, there's been a lot of white noise around it as well. So it's difficult for governments to take considered decisions. And then, of course, I mean, beyond a point, I think on this issue, Raj, we all also need to be humble, because whether you're in power as government or there's so much of X factor and so much of the unknown that it's fairly hard to have settled, considered decisions. Whether you're scientists or doctors, no one really knows how to handle this or in what proportion to handle it or what risks to take. On the lockdown, I do believe, and I think one can say that it was awfully planned. You don't lock down a country without at least a minimal level of planning for it. So I think last year's lockdown was extremely unilateral and very, very, disruptive for people in a harmful way. But was it needed? I'm sure it was needed. Could it have been planned better? I think it could have been. Has the media asked those questions sufficiently? I don't think so.
Yeah, media has not asked that questions, and you and I know that. And I'm having fun actually speaking to you, because as a journalist, you can say what you want. I would think twice before asking these questions to any of my other guests. So right now, on one end, we've been
sorry, because
Pardon?
You said that. There's a price. There is a price, and it's not just like as a journalist that I occupy some space of immunity, or impunity, either of that.
Course,
I was saying earlier, I don't, as a journalist, feel that I have impunity to say whatever I want. It should be evidence-backed, But similarly, I don't also have immunity. But I do believe all of us need to live like this is not, it's not even adversarial journalism, I mean, for me to say that,
of course,
like I said, it's actually stuff which I would imagine, good people, very, very professional people sitting in Niti Aayog or in government would be happy to have. See, I think it's very important, Raj, about the tonality, You also ask questions in a way which is, you intend good to come out of it. It's not just
of course, because you want.
Yeah, and it's very difficult to occupy. As leading even a small organization, you have led bigger ones. It is so difficult to occupy seats of leadership, and to get things done. So I actually have a lot of sympathy for politicians. It is the most difficult task on earth, But I'm sure if you ask questions, I hope that if you ask questions with good intention, not just to pin people down and make them feel like a cockroach on your operating table, they should be able to receive it better, And I don't think it's just for journalists. I think too many people are abdicating the idea that we are all citizens. As corporates, you're citizens, as politicians, you're citizens, as journalists, we're citizens. I mean, the more all of us abdicate from our desire for, like good for all, it's going to only come back in boomerang at some point. It is going to bite even people from business or whoever wants to play it the safest.
Yeah, we are all citizens first. And I remember years ago, I was on a flight, and I don't want to name the politician. It was a lady and was minister for tourism those days. And I used to like, and this was late 90s probably, and I was like, don't these people travel abroad and see how the infrastructure is and they come back? Why can't they do the same in India? I mean, that's what I used to think. I lived in a very idealistic world those days. But today my question is, politicians themselves, I mean, I'm not saying A or B politician, I'm saying themselves. One is what the narrative that's coming out, and on the other end, don't they have access to wealth of information? I mean, they know every little thing that moves on the ground, right? That's how they win elections. Don't they see, and somewhere doesn't it bother them that what's happening can come to bite them back? Because end of the day, elections are also won based on what people are feeling. Or is it that it doesn't matter?
Well, where this government is concerned, I actually think they're politically very, very astute. Nor are they a government that does not have ears on ground, because they're a very cadre-based party.
Of course.
They also have all the whole spectrum of RSS organizations, and they are plugged into every level of society, I would say. So one may disagree or feel critical of many aspects of their ideology or of their vision. But in terms of endeavor, feet on ground, ear on ground, connection with people, I would not fault them on that, So I think they keep their ears very closely on ground. So, one can only believe that they know what they're doing and they feel that they have delivered. And I think they have, or they have intended to deliver on certain welfare measures. I think one of the things I would say, as critical as I am of certain aspects of this government, some things which they have foregrounded. I don't know, on delivery, again, the country is difficult. Again, we need better journalism to see how good the delivery is. But I would say, at least in intention, for instance, right now, the Modi administration has taken up the issue of water for all in a very serious way. Now, again, how that will be designed, is water linking, river linking, I'm not going into those details, but at least as a mandate that a government has set for itself, health insurance, things like that, housing, these are good things. We do need at least basic egalitarianism and basic living that all citizens should, have before your aptitude and merit and all of that kick in. We are nowhere close to that equality for all, in terms of opportunity. So these are things that the government has taken up. Do they feel that by doing that, they have got enough goodwill on ground to win elections? Maybe that's their assessment, that, high communal rhetoric at one level and governance delivery, welfare delivery at another level, and a certain perception that, and maybe truthfully, that, the Prime Minister himself is not personally corrupt. These things may be a winning combination for them, But I'm saying for the rest of us, each of us in our own professions have a certain idea of what society should be, and at least we should live close to our own visions.
How do you decipher this? I mean, on one hand, you tell the country that you should wear masks and you should take protection, you should not go out of your house unless it's important. And on the other hand, you have election rallies and Kumbh Melas and stuff like that. What kind of messaging or signaling are you doing to the audience?
That's my point, Raj. Like, there isn't even anything to say on that, because it's so insanely hypocritical to do that. But I think that's also where uh, politicians, I think they just understand that on the ground, the people who are attending the rallies or attending the Kumbh Mela or even in recently in Holi, where there was the big gathering for Holi in Vrindavan, that on ground people are not actually really observing social distancing. They don't really. I mean, it's a calculation that the people who go for that are not going to be angry with government for not insisting they wear a mask, and the government is playing it both ways. So I had this interesting discussion once, about constitutional democracy with Fareed Zakaria, that the values actually that do keep a democracy safe, which is liberty, rule of law, freedom of expression, non-authoritarianism, all these qualities of a constitutional democracy are not necessarily the same as what runs an electoral democracy. And that's the great dilemma always, that uh, if you win a big election and then you have the mandate and you can change society as you want because you've been given a mandate. But there's a flip side, which is that we all have agreed to a constitutional democracy as well. But there are very few people, typically it's lawyers, civil society, today what's called the elite, who try and keep faith with that. In the past, it was very interesting. I always found as a journalist that people on the ground were more interested in democracy. The poorer you were, the more it mattered to you to have a democracy, because who came to power really impacted your life. For many elites, sitting in the cities, it doesn't matter because you're more or less secluded by your wealth from most things. So I used to always find that people on the ground really cared about democracy. So today I feel the certain humility that if this is where people are feeling happy, you can't be more worried for the people than they are themselves. So one has to wait a little bit for society to express itself. But at the same time, the rest of us who feel that certain constitutional values are being let down, it's for us to keep speaking about that.
I think we've discussed about politics and journalism. Let's move to another topic because we can keep discussing this. So, Shoma, tell me more about yourself. Where are you from?
Where I'm from the tea gardens, Raj, which was a beautiful but very borrowed life because it's just lush countryside. It was the Duas. It's called the Duas, which is the tea plantations of West Bengal. Which basically meant that you went to boarding school when you were very, very young. I was 7 years old when we went to boarding, and that's what most tea children did. But it was an idyllic childhood, very beautiful, very close to nature. Boarding school was fun. It was innocent. So yeah, I had a extremely, like I said, privileged but borrowed childhood, because that was not the true indicator of your wealth, but you had a really good life.
Yeah, because tea gardens, the quality of life was very, what do you say? I mean, I had friends from the tea gardens. They used to tell me they had tennis courts and stuff. Depends, I guess.
Yeah, but I think more than
Like you said, yeah,
more than the tennis court, for
quality
me,
of life.
yeah, I think for me, the really precious, like it's really seeped into the core of who I am, is that proximity to nature. So, one really understands the value of a life lived close to nature. I think that shaped a lot of who one has become as an adult also, is to protect that and understand the value of that. And, yeah. So that was, I think, the most
So your
precious part of my
father
time.
used to work for a. Your father used to work for a tea garden. Your father used to work for a company, tea company.
Yeah, actually, he worked with Goodrich. Before that, with the proprietary. He wasn't a tea planter himself. Both my parents were doctors. And my father, in fact, was a trained neurosurgeon from Britain. But he came back to India because he loved India. And I'm particularly proud of his work because he operated in some of the most difficult circumstances. He was very, very loved, very respected. He truly was, like that old image of what a doctor is, like a healer. He People loved him, because, and I was very proud of him because he ended up becoming a general practitioner, but he's done some of the most amazing operations in the most primitive conditions. There was a person who was gored by a wild elephant, and the tusk went through him, so he literally had like a hole. He's reconstructed, he's done plastic surgery, he's done deliveries, he's done orthopedics. He really
Wow.
was. Yeah, he used to do it under inverted table lamps sometimes. Anesthesia the old
Wow.
way, which is like putting a cloth on people's faces. So fantastic. And he did it. Later, he retired. He was in Bihar, worked in even more primitive situations. But he could have had the really wealthy, city doctor life, become a hyper specialist. But he opted for that life, and I feel very proud of. He passed away many years ago, but he really left a legacy of respect, which I could palpably sense as his child.
Yeah, I can see how proud you are. When you're speaking, it's showing. Are you the only daughter,
No, we're three
or you got
siblings,
siblings?
a brother and two sisters. I'm the youngest.
Oh, you're the youngest. And what are your other siblings doing? What do they do?
My my brother worked with Coke for most of his life. He retired from Coke. My sister was a wildlife filmmaker. She was a documentary filmmaker. She used to work with Mike Pandey and Rita Banerjee, and the three of them won several green Oscars for films that they made on wild elephant capture, on the whale shark. Then she opted out for a while because she was bringing up her children, but she's now in the social sector. So she's a development professional and a filmmaker.
Nobody chose to become a doctor.
No, my sister is a proxy doctor.
Are you
She's
there?
the, yeah, I can hear you. Can you see me?
Yeah, yeah, I can see you. We have a little problem with the internet, I guess, but that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite clear
So,
for
so
me.
what made you get into journalism? You can hear,
Um,
right?
to, a cer- yeah, to a certain extent, it was by accident. It wasn't by design. I sort of, I had this restless feeling in college that I wanted to make a difference. I didn't know, one came from such blankness. All other children coming from T, I think will understand that. We really came from the boondocks. One had no framework, no sort of sense of the world. So when I came to Delhi, I literally knew nobody over here. So I just knew that I wanted to make a difference. I was looking for purpose. And I was one of those nerdy kids that did really well in college. So I topped Delhi University twice. But while all my friends were going abroad, I was already seeking a sense of, I don't know, meaning in life, nothing more sort of concrete than that. And a college professor at that time put me in touch with Tarun, who was Tejpal, who was, he had his own company already. He was doing sort of books and ideas and writers and things like that. So I first taught in Mirambika, the Aurobindo Ashram Experimental School. Then I taught in Sri Ram School. And then I ended up working with Tarun. So I kind of meandered my way into journalism. Then I left his company and I joined Pioneer, then Outlook, India Today, and then started Tehelka together. So it was really, I kept looking for something that would make me feel purposeful. And I think my years of teaching, and then later when we started Tehelka, for a few really good years, one had a strong sense of purpose, if nothing else.
So you worked with the Pioneer and Outlook with Vinod Mehta?
Yes, Vinod was there. Pioneer, he had already left. Chandan was there. And then
Okay.
Outlook, Vinod was there.
So,
Yeah.
so what do you do for de-stressing?
for de-stressing. Mostly run away to nature again. So we're constantly going off hunting forests and rivers. I'm a real nature person, so that is one way of de-stressing for sure. The moment I'm in nature, nothing else matters. Also, my entire family is absolutely passionate about cinema. So my reading has gone down. Our family pastime is to watch movies. I think, there's nothing left that we haven't seen. So one is constantly hunting for tips on what next to watch. So yeah, mostly that. A lot of family time. A lot of, because I've been a working mother all my life. I do like socialize very little and spend a lot of time with my children. I have two boys now; they're both quite grown up. My elder one's going to college soon, so they have less need for company. But otherwise, a lot of one's free time was spent with the kids. Doing things that the kids wanted. So yeah,
What are their
cinema.
names?
Valmik and Kabir.
Valmik and Kabir. Wow. Beautiful name.
You can
Lovely names.
literally
Yeah.
in that.
Yeah. Uh, like I started in the beginning by saying that you had a very illustrious career, very colorful career. You've been through ups and downs, and so tell me, what are some things that you learned that you would not repeat? If you had to revisit your whole journey, what are the things you would not revisit? I mean, you would not
Do again.
do again. Yeah, that's what I meant.
This may sound
Not repeat. Yeah.
yeah. This may sound odd, Raj, but the one thing that has kept me, I think, steady and happy, speaking to the House of Cheer, throughout my life, is that mostly I have been able to live uh, by my own conscience, and I haven't cut corners on what matters to me personally, my own value system, whether that coincides with others or not. But what I will say is that through all the ups and downs that one has been through, I have slept an easy night, that I haven't like betrayed my own value system at any point. And so to that extent, I'd say it's not that I would not, like, there's no big regret in my life. I think there are times when I have operated what I thought was from a level of, I would put noble words to it, which is transparency, integrity, XYZ. And I think on hindsight, it was acting from a position of naivete, And so to a certain extent, I think I've actually struggled, Raj, that I am somebody who trusts easily. And I think through some of my most tumultuous time, there's a temptation to become cynical and not trust. And I have very consciously tried to retain trust in people and change your position only after someone lets you down, rather than anticipate that as being a defense position from the beginning. But I have operated naively several times and quite often in my life. I think today, if I were to look back, I would still operate from my heart, but I would operate with a better reading of landscape, So, yeah, less naivete. And I would put less glorious words on it, I mean, it might seem transparent and full of integrity to me, but in the world, it's just pure naive behavior. Yeah.
Nothing wrong in trusting people. I come from a philosophy that the only way you can get trust is to give trust. You have to trust, and there may be a thing where people may let you down, but then it's always their loss, not yours. That's the way I look at it. I've always looked at it.
Yeah.
We are running out of time, but before I end the session, this is one question I ask everybody, all my guests. So, what does happiness mean to you?
What does happiness mean to me? This may sound like an end of life understanding, but I mean, of course, I have a lot of things that make me happy. But if I really get to the heart of it, Raj. Like I already said to you, the one thing that has kept me happy through a lot of losses, through a lot of loss of professional, I've lost a lot, I would say, in these few years. But what has kept me happy through it all is, like I told you, that I feel I can look people in the eye. I'm very clean in my own conscience, at least, and I can look my children in the eye, I can look others in the eye, I can look my antagonists and my adversaries in the eye. And I think if one can arrive there, that sense of peace is there. So a lot of your external world could be in chaos. But if your internal world is at peace, then I think for me that's happiness. And I think the only time I have been very deeply, deeply, deeply unhappy in my life is when, one has felt betrayed by close people, so external circumstances, loss of prominence, career, wealth, all that is shit happens to everyone, but it's when you lose trust or you lose a sense of innocence about things, that is painful. And then, so for me, the biggest question I've had to face is, how do you forgive without without allowing something to perpetuate? You call out wrongdoing, but you also forgive. Whether you forgive yourself, you forgive others. That was a big dilemma. How do you do that? And I think to walk lightly is the best, recipe for happiness. And I think I manage that. I do walk lightly. I don't carry much baggage with me. So yeah.
No, thank you very much. And for all our viewers, Shoma has a show on YouTube called Enquiry with Shoma Chaudhury. Please go and subscribe and watch it. More importantly, Shoma, you have a big heart. And, this is the lady with her moral compass intact. Thank you so much for being with me on Fridays Live.
Thank you very much, Raj. Thank you. It was a real pleasure being here.
Yeah, thank you. I have to see how